Okay, what's up, guys? My name's Sammy. I'm one of the co-founders of Redacted. We are a DeFi project on Ethereum that mostly focuses on building liquidity for other DAOs or other projects in the space. We've been on mainnet since December of 2021, and today I'm going to be talking about one of our latest developments called Dinero. So, okay, so what is Dinero? Dinero is a stablecoin, but I'm sure you guys are already aware of what a stablecoin is. So, what I really want to focus on today is why stablecoins are not set up ideally for the current market. So basically all stablecoins today have a strong dependency on external sources of yield, right? So we're all used to this, liquidity mine programs, bribe programs, we play a part in that too. A bunch of really unsustainable sort of liquidity obtaining methods. Beyond that, we're also seeing that the opportunity cost of staking ETH is too high for people to bear the risk of farming other things. When it was DeFi summer, not so long ago, what we saw was that there was no real sort of backbone yield of Ethereum itself, and everyone was just farming Curve, and that was really attractive. But then as the Lidos and rocket pools of the world started to pop up, we started to see that people's risk preferences really went down for farming different smart contracts. And we saw basically all of the TVL of DeFi sort of after the Terra situation flow out of DeFi and into ETH staking. We also noticed that with the stablecoins today, that the centralized collateral is the key to scaling every stablecoin, right? As you guys know, DAI is really grown to be one of the biggest stablecoins, but it is exclusively not exclusively anymore, but heavily collateralized by USDC. And we see the same with Frax and a bunch of other stablecoins. And we all know this, there's zero utility to them outside of farming and dumping, right? When it comes time for you to get out of your ETH position or whatever other position, I'm sure everyone in this room just goes straight to USDC or USDT, or they're going into a decentralized stablecoin to farm Curve or whatever's the hot new token. So Dinero. So this is what we are essentially thinking, right? Is how can we make a new decentralized stablecoin that once we know we reach the critical point of not being able to sustain its growth through farming and incentives, how do we sort of cross that chasm to where we can make a stablecoin that people actually want to use? And we spent the past year sort of doing some R&D work on this with our core contributors and a lot of people from the Ethereum community, Ethereum Foundation, and this is sort of where we got to. So I'll dive into the specifics of it now, but we're building a decentralized stablecoin that's exclusively collateralized by ETH, has some really unique utilities in it around account abstraction and meta transactions attached to the relayer, which is part of the system, and we are collateralizing it by our own staked Ethereum. So that was a bit of a word salad, so I'll dive into what the three components of the Dinero protocol are. So the first one is Pyrex Ether, which just launched on testnet on Monday. It's open for any of you to go try and deposit it. What is Pyrex Ether, right? So you guys are all very familiar with the Lido sort of model, or the rocket pool model, where you can stake your Ether and get back a receipt token, essentially, for your yield. PXETH is obviously the same sort of concept as that, but it follows the two-token staking model. So users can deposit into PXETH, and they can get they can get the PXETH receipt token, and they can use that. It's pegged one-to-one to ETH, and they can farm it across multiple different liquidity venues like Curve or Balancer or whatever other L2s we expand to. So all the games that you guys love and are used to are available. And then it also has a token called APXETH, where people can stake the Pyrex Ether to get the Ethereum staking yield. Now, the benefit of the two-token model is that what we've seen with other LSDs, you guys might be familiar with the Frax ETH model, is that you're not going to beat Lido by just you're not going to beat Lido or eat into their pie by offering the exact same solution as them, right? And we know that by making the two-token model, we have a system in place where people can enter the staked Pyrex ETH, where they're earning boosted yield by sacrificing all the yield that you would have gotten on the LPs. And then with the Pyrex Ether, you're sacrificing the staking yield for boosted LP yield. So yeah, we've sort of built a system now where we think that we can, or we know that we can beat Lido's staking yield, Rocket Pool's staking yield, but it gets a lot more interesting than that because you guys already know the LSDs. So this is the same concept that I just talked about. And so there we go to Dinero, right? Another thing that we're seeing right now is that a lot of the really hot DeFi projects are in this LSD-Fi sort of narrative, right? Where, you know, borrow against your RETH, borrow against your STETH, and everyone's happy, right? But what we also recognize is that the LTVs that people can offer on these LSDs is not as competitive as the LTVs that they can offer on pure naked ETH, right? And the reason for that is the means of getting ETH off of your CDP is much easier by auctioning it, and it allows people to go to really competitive rates like 110% we've seen with liquidity, compared to the LSDs where the big dependency for all of them is liquidity. And you can't really build a sustainable debt model where your number one limiting factor is the liquidity pool for the tokens that you want to borrow against. So one thing we've built into Pyrex Ether is a buffer system. And what this allows for is so I'm sure you guys are aware of the ETH staking queue and how that can build up, potentially be very long in like a black swan event. And what we're sort of aiming to do here is create a stable coin where we can offer very, very competitive LTVs on an LSD by the means of actually leveraging the unstaking queue in Ethereum, right? What we don't want to do is create a system where people can't borrow a stable coin or they can't get leverage for their ETH staking yield because they are limited by the LP that the stable coin has. Whereas with Dinero specifically, when liquidations occur, the PX Ether is unstaked from the Ethereum queue and potentially sped up in times of a black swan event using our buffer system so that it can be liquidated in a much more effective manner. So we've done projections in-house, and we found that we can safely offer LTVs of our stablecoin at as low as 108% in times of very low volatility, and that can be a ranging number. So, okay, stablecoin stuff, LSD stuff, you guys already know what this is. How do we continue to grow the decentralized stablecoin space to something which people are actually interested in using, right? Sure, you can do some really cool looping and you can get really high yield and stuff, but that we all know that that's unsustainable, and we've seen a lot of players in the space come and go because of leaning too heavily on that. So one thing we built also is the redacted relayer. And what the redacted relayer is a decentralized RPC provider where people can actually use Dinero, the stablecoin, as gas on Ethereum mainnet, and eventually with some of the partnerships that we're working with on the L2s as they start to decentralize. And what we think is really interesting about this is that we're starting to see account abstraction slowly become a real thing in the Ethereum space, but we're yet to see really people take advantage of the unique use cases that enables, right? And you might say, okay, like why would I use the stablecoin over Ethereum? Well, as we are the ones collateralizing the stablecoin with our own staked Ether, the protocol can slowly enter a position where if we reach a critical mass of staked Ether in our system, then we can be in a position where we can actually start building the blocks ourselves. And if we get big enough and we can start to build those blocks ourselves, then people using our stablecoin for gas can have better priority in the mempool than those who are just using regular Ether, right? You guys, I'm sure not all of you, I'm sure everyone's heard of Flashbots, but maybe not everyone has used it. It's a very similar system to that, but it is, it's tokenized, which everyone loves. So in the end, like, you can look at the system however you want. I think most people, or the average user, will look at it as a stable coin. But what we're really seeing is the first ever tokenized example of like account abstraction using our staked Ether product. So I did this before. I know this is too small and it's really complicated. But for those of you who are interested in how the system works from a technical level, here you go. I'm not going to walk through it because I know if I was sitting in the back there, I couldn't see what it says. But we can, if someone wants to talk exactly about how the system works after, we can dive more into it. Oh, one thing I didn't talk about is when people are using other tokens for gas, right? So we have some implementations that exist right now. We've seen the avocado wallet from Gelato, and we've seen people start to play around with these meta transactions. But what limits them is that you actually don't create any net you actually don't create any net demand for your token because people buy the token for the gas, and then when they execute the transaction, the protocol just sells that token for the underlying Ethereum. Whereas with us, when people are using our stablecoin for gas, we're using the underlying Ethereum that's collateralizing the system as the means of gas. So that's the only other thing I think I'd add here. So going forward, I think we have a really strong focus on Ethereum and its sort of ecosystem around that because we play into a lot of the narratives and future focuses of the Ethereum protocol and as it develops, right? So, I think one thing we announced with the testnet is that the token is going to have an OFT wrapper with Layer 0. We partnered with them for a bridging solution and potentially some other bridges. And if you are not an Ethereum-focused product or chain for that matter, then we have a bunch of really cool bridging solutions to come over to different L1s and different L2s. And this leads into the next slide. Oh, sorry. We have a very big treasury that we've been building over the past year with some of our other products, and are looking forward to working with the other builders in the space here to create some really cool incentives that don't involve spending every dollar you have on attracting new users. So one thing I think that people don't really focus on a lot is revenue generation. I think people usually put it to the side when they think about the metrics that they might value more, right? Like, let's get more TVL in the system, let's get more users, and then you find yourself in this sort of, I won't call it a death spiral, but you find yourselves on this downward spiral where you end up spending all the money that you have or the tokens that you printed out of nowhere to sort of sustain yourself, right? And one thing that we put a really big focus on here is every single layer of our protocol, how can we capture fees without without ruining the user experience? And how can we use those fees that we generate to sustain the protocol and the buffer system that I mentioned for the immediate withdrawals from the staking queue? So I won't dive into the numbers or anything, but from Pyrex Ether, we're looking at taking a small portion of the yield that's generated from the ETH staking yield. Our fees will be lower than Lido and Rocket Pool because we can lean heavier onto the other two parts of the system. Dinero, I'm sure you guys are aware of how the other CDPs work. Liquidation fees, interest fees, sort of the whole nine there. And the relayer is the really interesting part, right? So what we see with a lot of LSDs now is no one can sort of beat the Lido rate because they say, you know what, Ethereum offers 3% yield, and we're going to be running a MEV strategy, and our MEV strategy is what's going to differentiate us. But as you guys are probably aware, everyone is running a MEV strategy on their LSDs, and that's not, it doesn't differentiate anyone, right? Everyone has MEV. But actually what's really interesting is if you think on the other side of the spectrum of that, you have a complete blue ocean that no one's really looked into or tapped into yet, right? And that is actually like MEV protection. We've seen with Flashbots Protect and other sort of services that are popping up now that people are willing to pay for priority in the mempool for a bit of protection on their transactions, right? And we think that if we look at the other side of the spectrum, which other people are not focusing on addressing, that with our relayer fees that we generate through minor bribes and all of these sort of systems, that we can actually bring a very unique revenue stream to the LSD that others do not offer, that will continue to sort of differentiate our system from others. So this is for the devs. So when we have a big focus on activation energy with everything we do at Redacted, we set aside $7.5 million in non-Butterfly, which is our governance tokens, aside to make sure that anyone who's looking to integrate with us or work with us has the means to do so. I've put a big focus on sustainability and self-sustainability of your protocol, and I think that the protocol is designed with that in mind. But we're really planning on coming out of the doors with a big splash here, looking to and become one of the top LSDs for the first part of the release in a matter of months here, and we've set aside the incentives for everyone else who's a builder to make sure that they can see the upside of that. So for those who are not familiar with Redacted and what we've done before, we have two other products, Hidden Hand. It is a vote incentive marketplace that we have sort of integrated across a lot of the bigger DeFi names that you've probably heard of: Balancer, Frax, Ribbon, now Camelot and Pendle coming up as well. So we have Hidden Hand here that we're going to also be using to sort of build our liquidity program. So if you're another dev that has a gauge system attached to your protocol, then we can also talk about different integrations we can do there. And then Pyrex, which is where PX for PX Ether comes from, is our liquid wrapping solution. So we focused, as we were in the R&D phase for this, we launched Pyrex in sort of a beta alpha phase where we started with CVX. So we built like a liquid wrapping solution for tokens that are considered illiquid or non-transferable by nature, like a vote lock CVX or like an ES-GMX sort of tool. The plan, I learned this time last year actually to not say dates anymore, so I'm just saying soon. But development is now. PX ETH is now actually, this is from 3 days before. So PX ETH is now. You can go on Gorily, and tomorrow you can go on Holsky testnet, and you can mint PX Ether, and you can test our immediate withdrawal system and our relayer decentralized. Well, you can't run the nodes yet, but you can test our validator system out. Right after that, we're working with a lot of really strong Oracle providers, and as soon as we have really good oracles for PX Ether up and PX ETH LPs, then you will see Dinero launch shortly after that. And the relayer follows the Dinero launch. So that's our roadmap. Yeah, that's it. So I will field some questions if there's any questions. Otherwise, thank you all for coming, and yeah.
You just mentioned the Oracle providers.
Yes.
May I ask you,
yeah,
what would the Oracle providers be? Because, from what I'm seeing, it looks like your Pyrex ETH will be mainly on-chain, right?
100% on-chain.
So that takes Chainlink out of the question, right? Basically, how do you?
When I say price feed, I'm referring to the price feeds for the price of PX Ether. So that we can enable the debt via the Dinero system. So Chainlink is very much a part of it, both from the CCIP for coming cross-chain and also for their typical price feed solution. So what we're looking at right now is Chainlink for APX ETH, the staked Ether solution, and then for the PX ETH LPs using Redstone so that people can get their leverage and debt against the LPs as well. Any other questions? If not, we can wrap up.
I think so.
Right on. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.